we just heard, our gospel reading talks about Jesus saying that his yoke is easy. He says, "Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." These words from Jesus are probably more better known than others. If you make your way into any Christian gift shop, you'll see them quoted as words of encouragement in greeting cards or on posters. I've even seen it printed on a mug. Not a bad thing, but let's take a minute and think about the context in which these words were first spoken. Now, these words, they come shortly after Jesus' instructions to his disciples about their mission to share the good news. Instructions that tell them to head out with minimal supplies, rely primarily on the generosity of others, all with the caveat that they are being sent out like sheep into the midst of wolves. Fast forward just a bit, and a crowd has gathered around Jesus and his disciples. And as Jesus addresses the crowd, he names that there are those who will reject his message, mostly because it doesn't look the way they expected. Perhaps fear of the unknown having taken hold. And it's during all this, after all these difficult instructions and challenging words, that Jesus talks about taking on his yoke, promising that it will be easy and provide rest for the weary. But as far as I can tell, nothing that's been said about this life of discipleship, about following Jesus, sounds particularly easy or especially restful. Even the imagery that Jesus uses here is demanding. Most of you probably know what a yoke is. It's that large wooden beam or harness that's used to direct an animal, often an ox, in its work, typically on a farm. And there are yokes that can be used with a single animal or to pair two animals together, doubling their strength and the amount of work that they can handle. Now, while today most farms use machinery, yoked oxen would have been used to pull equipment like a plow used for maintaining fields. Now, I have friends who have a medium-sized farm, and I've spent time there. And let me just say, farming isn't easy or restful. Waking up and being ready to work before the sun even rises, non-stop chores, tending the crops, feeding the animals, cleaning the chicken coops, and that's when things are going well. Quadruple the efforts when drought hits, animals get sick, equipment breaks, people who do the work get sick. Was it fun to go out for an occasional day on the farm, harvest kale, and pet the sheep? Absolutely. But it wasn't farming. Farming is flippin' hard. And Jesus is telling us to take on his easy yoke. But what's easy about a yoke around your neck, plowing headfirst into the work Jesus would have us do? Nuria Love Parrish, that's her name, a priest in the Episcopal Church, bought a former organic farm just north of Grand Rapids, Michigan in 2001. And for years, the land lay fallow. Nuria knew that she wanted to do something special with this property. She wanted to begin a ministry at the intersection of food, place, and faith. But she didn't know how. After a failed attempt at building up this ministry on her own, Nuria prayed, "I can't do this, but if you do this, I will help." She yoked herself and this ministry to Jesus. Plain Song Farm is now a living laboratory for farm-based discipleship. Their mission? To cultivate connections between people, places, and God by making a place that nurtures belonging and the radical renewal of God's world. Commenting on the growth of the ministry, Nuria writes, "The small seed of faithfulness and a willingness to risk in response to God's call has borne incredible fruit. I can't count how many people's lives God has changed through this ministry. I am sure I don't know them all. And most days it feels like we have barely begun. But the things we now count boggle my mind. Hundreds of donors, thousands of dollars, hundreds of people who come to the farm in any given year, tens of thousands of servings of fresh produce grown and given. I know I didn't create this growth. It's so far beyond my capacity that it always feels like a miracle." Yoked to Jesus, Nuria, along with many others, partnered with God, plowing fields, tending crops, nurturing new growth. And you can be sure it wasn't easy and is still a lot of work. But the work that God calls us into is the work of new life. It is restorative, even when it's hard. Now, we aren't all farmers, but we are here. We're here exploring what learning to follow Jesus looks like. And I often wonder if we see ourselves as lagging behind him, maybe even struggling to keep up, or perhaps deciding to keep our distance out of fear, shame, doubt. Yet when Jesus invites us to be yoked to him, it means we're right next to him. It's Jesus saying, "I want to be next to you. In the fear, in the shame, in the doubt, in all of it, I want to be next to you." And those things that we're working on that are really flippin' hard, the fields in our lives in need of plowing or planting or nurturing, the stuff we keep trying to do on our own again and again and again, only to grow more and more weary. Jesus is beside us for that too, showing us how to partner with him for the heavy lifting, making a way for new life to bloom. True, the invitation to be yoked to Jesus doesn't promise a life without hardship, but it does promise that we don't have to go it alone. It does promise that we will be joined to Jesus and that he will be alongside us as we endure whatever challenges come our way. So I'm going to ask us to do something now. I want us to take a moment and look at the person next to you. If you're online with us and you're alone, don't worry, you're looking at me. Now, you might not know this person really well. You might know them just a bit, or maybe you've never spoken before. Friends, we are yoked to Jesus, and in that we are yoked to one another in him. Walking together, caring for one another, praying for one another, because while we might know exactly what it is, we might not know exactly what it is, we know that we all carry things that are too heavy to carry alone. But together, with Jesus, we can lessen the load. And even in those hard things, it grants us a rest that instills joy. A yoke that is good and a burden that is light indeed. Amen.